G'day historians. So today we're going to have a chat about the out of Africa theory. So our learning goal here is to develop an understanding of the out of Africa theory, and by the end of this we should be able to produce a timeline of the out of Africa model from an annotated map, and describe the evidence supporting it. So that's our goal, right? Like that's what we want to be able to do by the end. So the out of Africa theory is pretty simple. It suggests that all modern humans originated in Africa and then migrated from there to other parts of the world. There is loads of evidence to support this. We have genetic evidence, linguistics, that's the languages evidence, fossil evidence, and so on. And there's other stuff as well. The genetic evidence shows that humans share a common ancestor about 200,000 years ago from Africa. The fossil evidence shows that all of our early human species, such as Homo Erectus, Australopithecus, etc., originated in Africa and then migrated from there to other parts of the world. Our linguistic evidence, and we'll go through this in a minute, suggests that all human languages can be traced back to a common origin in Africa. And that one's probably a little bit beyond the scope of our lesson, so we'll touch on that, but not too much. And the first migration out of Africa occurred around 100,000 years ago. So with early humans spreading to the Middle East and then Asia and then Australia. Now, this is what it looks like, right? So we have in Africa around the sort of Middle East of Africa over here. This is the Middle East, but the Central Africa over to the east, humans first evolve and then they start to spread everywhere, starting into the Middle East and then off into Asia, with a large group coming down into Australia in the northwest and sort of starting there and then moving to the rest of it. Then we have people moving into Europe and middle northern Asia about 40 million years ago. And then more recently up into North Europe, about 12 million years, 100,000 years ago, 1,200,000 years ago. Then at about 16, they move into the North Americas and over there. I always find this really exciting. The fact that we have in Australia the longest continuously populated region outside of Africa. And I think that's phenomenal. So what does the timeline actually look like? 200,000 years ago, after this, we're going to use the abbreviation YA. Common ancestor emerges in Africa. 100,000, they spread all throughout Africa. 100,000 years ago, they make their first trip sort of northeast into Middle East and Asia. And again, as I said, 60,000 years off into 65,000 years off into Australia from there. That's my people. Later migrations to Europe and East Asia happened about 50,000 years ago. 25,000 years ago, we start to move off via what I guess is modern Russia into the North Americas and then the South Americas after that. And the modern human populations, they continue to spread around the world and diversify now, which has led to some more interesting changes and cultural shifts. And it's really, it's phenomenal that we have such an open world these days. So it's really believed that we actually coexisted for a long time with other human species, such as the Neanderthals, such as Homo florensis, more closer down to the islands near Australia. And what is really cool about this is, for a long time, we thought that it was us who sort of, I guess, through violence, sort of destroyed the competition. But it turns out it may have more a case of being we sort of bred together and sort of became one, which means we probably weren't as far separated apart as we thought. And we can still find particularly Neanderthal DNA in humans today. If you got red hair, there's a very good chance that one of your ancestors was a Neanderthal. So what are the implications for this evidence? Okay, so the out of Africa theory helps to explain why we have such a genetic diversity within Africa, and genetic diversity decreases throughout the rest of the world as we move out. So for example, everyone whose family originates back to Africa in more recent times is much more genetically diverse than those who live in, comparing even, say, North America to Asia to Australia to Europe. And that's because all the people started here, right? And there's huge diversity, but it was only a small group that actually left in the first place. It was that one group. So all the genetic diversity after that starts to come from there. The Out of Africa one also explains for us why we only see the really early human fossils within Africa. So Homo erectus, only found in Africa. And again, all of our early human ancestors. And we see that here, right? So here we start to see these are our early human ancestors. And we're talking millions of years ago here. So these ones that start to pop up just about here, we get a little bit of spreading of those outside. So Neanderthals outside of Africa. But Homo heidelbergensis, Homo erectus, all of these guys, like they're all in Africa. And that's probably because that's where humanity started. Now, there are alternative hypotheses. Now, you notice I don't call them a theory. A theory is actually a highly regarded body of knowledge. The multi-regional hypothesis suggests that humans sort of evolved in lots of different places and then interbred to get a bit more homogeneity, so similarity amongst the top. That's because there's genetic flow, and in a way that probably wouldn't really be possible. And to be honest, I'm not saying that this is a theory that has been borne out because of racism, but it's it comes back to that refusal sometimes of allowing Africa to be that cradle of humanity. And that's a problem, right? That's something that we start to see, particularly in studies of history and archaeology and anthropology, in previous generations of historians than we tend to have now. All right, I hope that made a lot of sense. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thank you for watching and we'll catch you next time. Bye now.